Hello friends, welcome to the lecture on hashes in Perl. This would be a basic lecture of how we create hashes, what are the difference between arrays and hashes, and how we can access elements from our hashes. So let's get started. We'll not do more of a theory in this lecture. We'll quickly do a program to understand how we represent hashes. But before going into the program, we'll first understand what exactly we mean by a hash. Hash is basically a key and a value pair. What do we mean by a key and a value pair? Basically, key would be something that actually has a value associated to it. So key becomes a unique element in a hash. You can have multiple keys, so that means your hash would have multiple records associated with it. A key can have values, either a single value or multiple values stored in an anonymous list that we look later during the course of understanding more details about hashes. But as of now, you can understand hashes to be simply key and a value pair. So hashes can represent something like a database. A database does what database simply has data in it, in the form of records, and each record has multiple lines of data with a primary key associated for the entire table. So simply you can say in hash you have one key associated with a lot of data in it. So let's get started. How we create hashes in Perl? We create hashes using a percent sign followed by the hash name. Let's have a hash name which is very self-explanatory in itself. This would be an ideal suggestion to do that anytime whenever you write any Perl script or any Perl program. So for example, now we are going to keep students info. So we'll write the hash name as students, and we'll this is our definition. This is a declaration of hash. Now we'll define our hash. So again we'll simply use students, and we'll have some data in it. So again, while defining arrays, we just assigned a list to an array, and the array variable had data in it. Simply we're going to do the same thing here also in the hash. So we'll have name field, this is our key, and we'll have some kind of a value associated to it. So let's say my value is Rahul. We'll go ahead, we'll have his roll number, and we'll have an entry for the roll number. we'll do we'll add some more fields like class, and we'll say he's in class BE. We can add some column like marks and some number associated to it. Let's say 90 is what I associate marks to. So now you have seen we have both strings as well as integers associated to this particular list, and which is basically assigned to a hash. Now what exactly has happened here? We'll see when we'll print this particular hash. We'll use usestrict and use data dumper. Now we'll go ahead and simply print %student, and we'll go ahead and execute this. Oops. Okay. So now what has happened? If you see, every alternate value is our key. So this becomes key, this becomes key, and this becomes key, and has become every alternate data basically in the list has become a value to this particular key. So we can quickly go through this particular output that we have got. So marks has become key, name has become key, class, roll number, all have become key, and correspondingly every alternate value has become a value associated to the keys. We'll again execute this, and we'll see previously marks was the first record, now name has become the first record. If we execute it again, something else. Okay, again we have got marks, now we have got class. So what exactly is happening here? In arrays, when we actually print the arrays n number of times, the index position of each element would remain the same. Remember this. In hashes, we don't have indexes assigned to any of the key value pair. A key value pair is an independent thing which is located anywhere. So hashes in memory are not indexed. They are simply stored in memory. The data when printed or when obtained will be at random. It's not necessary that name will always appear at the top and next will be followed by roll number. This would be the case if we would have assigned this list to an array variable, because when we assign this list to an array variable, the array indexes its data. Hashes don't index their data. Do remember this point pretty clearly. Whenever we play with hashes, remember you will not get the data consistently in that in the manner you have stored it. So there are different ways how we can pull out data from a hash, because in cases of hashes we always reference data not using an index but using the key associated with each of its value. We'll look into this in more detail when we go ahead in lectures associated to hashes. So now moving ahead to declaration and definition of hashes. This is how we have defined a hash. This is not very much a read in a readable format. Now you know, because you know how a hash works, you can say name is equal to Rahul. But let's define a hash in a little more readable format in the program itself. So as you have seen the output, this particular arrowhead helps us to indicate marks is a key and 90 is its value. So what we'll do is simply replace the name, the arrow that was separating the key and a value, with, the comma that was separating between the key and the value with an arrowhead. So we'll do this for all of our key value pairs and we'll see what exactly has happened once we go ahead and print this particular hash. So let's go ahead and print it. Oops. We need to change the key value pair, commas. Yeah. So if you can see here, we have got the output in the same way that we had got the output while we declared it using commas. But this is more of a readable format. So we'll follow this notation whenever we define a hash, and this would be an ideal way of defining a hash in future also. Let's go ahead. Now I have an array variable. Probably this array variable has some fruits associated with it. So these fruits has some quantities also associated with it. Let's say apple with a quantity of 10. I'm using commas because this is an array and not a hash. Now we have another fruit, like let's say grapes. So I am having a quantity of 100. I have another fruit, oranges, and I have a value associated with this as 20. Remember, arrays can also have strings and values. Similar, hashes can also have its data in both strings as well as values. Now this is an array. Now we can assign this array to a hash. So I'm defining another array, another hash, which is fruits itself. Don't get confused. The names might be same, but remember this is an array variable. This particular fruits is an array variable. This particular fruits is an hash variable. Perl stores them as an array variable and a hash variable. The name here won't matter. So don't get confused even if you define the same names. But a suggestion would be never play with the same names for even for, like, let's say for a scalar variable, array variables and hashes. It would be advisable to have some kind of a naming convention for all these three. So here I just simply assign fruits to it and then go ahead and print using a dumper slash %fruits. Now if you see here, what has happened is it has converted the hash, or it has converted the array into a hash. Now this list gets more of a readable notation. Previously, when it was in array, you knew what exactly it meant. For example, apple, you knew there were 10 quantities of apple with me. But array doesn't really, it is not a self-explanatory way of understanding it. But hashes has made it very pretty much clear. Okay, apple, it gives me 10 oranges, it gives me 20 grapes, it gives me 100. So I hope this is pretty uh, a pretty stark difference between an array and and a hash. That's the reason wherever possible use hashes, because you would actually not index your data would be free of indexes, but your data would be more of a readable format, more of accessing data would become more easier, and storing of your data would be pretty much self understanding. Now what we'll do is we'll access the data that is stored in the hash. How would we do that? Remember, whenever we wanted to access an array, we used a dollar sign followed by the name of the array. In this case, it's fruits, and we used to have square brackets, and we used to give the index name. So when we say 0, and if we print this particular statement, we would get apple here. Okay. Now, similarly, you just have to remember the basic thing is that use a scalar reference to either an array or a hash. So in this case, your hash is dollar fruits. Sorry, your hash is fruits. So because it's a hash variable, I have dereferenced it using a dollar sign. So this now becomes a scalar variable. Now to get the element of a hash, I am using curly braces. In case of array variables, we were using square brackets. In case of hashes, we'll always use curly braces. Now we need to dereference, we need to access this particular value. In case of an array, we were giving the index value, and we would get that particular value which is stored at that particular index in an array. In this case, we'll, as hashes are key and value, there is no indexing in hashes, we'll simply give a key to it. So the key would remain apple, and we're going to print this particular statement, and we would see what exactly we have got. So I would say value equal colon and something like this, and we'll go ahead and print this. So if you see value, I've got 10, because when we dereferenced our first element, that is, or the key apple had a value associated with it as 10, and we have successfully got this value. So I hope this is pretty much clear how we access an element of a hash. Simply use curly braces. Inside that curly braces, pass the key, not the value. Pass the key to get the value. Pass whatever you want from a particular hash. Do remember these points. These are very important points in understanding hashes, in playing hashes in future. Now, what if we want to change the quantity of a hash? So it's pretty simple. We'll simply say, we'll first dereference the hash. How we dereference the hash? We'll simply write the hash with a scalar variable. So our hash name was fruits. We'll dereference, instead of a percent sign, we'll say dollar fruits. Again, for hashes, we'll always use curly braces. As in the case of arrays, we'll use square brackets. Inside this, which key we have to modify? We want to modify apple. Okay, we want to modify the value of apple to, let's say, 30. So we can simply do this, and we can print our hash again after modification of our values. So what is the output? Now if you can see, previously apples were 10, we printed the value also. Now after modifying the value of apple, we have changed the value of apple inside the hash to 30. I hope this is pretty clear, friends. So this is how you can access the this is how you can access the values. This is how you can modify the values inside your hashes. These are pretty basic things associated with a hash. We'll quickly revise this. Why I am doing this? Because hashes are the most important form of data structures in Perl. You need to have a real sound control in understanding the hashes. Moving ahead, these would be the stepping stones of writing any sort of programs. How do we define hashes? Simply use a percent sign followed by a name and define it in this. This is the best way of defining a hash, to add elements to hashes. Once we have defined, in case we need to access any element, this is the way we access elements. Use a scalar reference to the name of the hash followed by the curly braces, and give the key. In the hashes are not indexed, so you always need to have keys associated with it. Similarly, if you need to just modify any data inside the hash, we simply access, we simply use the key to which the data is to be modified and pass a new value to it. So this is the basics on hashes, and we'll we'll have a little detailed discussion about the various functions that are associated with hashes and what all we can do in hashes in our next lectures or in our coming lectures. Till then, you can have a little practice on hashes. I'll see you at the next lecture. Thank you.